Hello, everyone. Wanted to take a quick moment to let everyone know that the Ebon Hawk has been nominated for the annual Money Tree Top 10 Star Wars Podcast Awards. We're honored to be nominated amongst a bunch of other great Star Wars podcasts. Voting goes until April the 30th, and if you'd like to vote for us or your favorite Star Wars podcast, check out the link in our Instagram bios. May the Force be with you.
Hello there, this is Cassia.
And this is Brian.
Welcome to the Ebon Hawk, a podcast discussing Star Wars news and Knights of the Old Republic.
Spoiler alert for the Knights of the Old Republic series and the Star Wars films, TV shows, and all other media.
This is where the fun begins.
Hello, and welcome to the Ebon Hawk Podcast. Today we're going to be doing a little recap of the Bad Batch arc of the Clone Wars. I'm super excited for the Bad Batch to get started up, and we thought it would be fun to rewatch the arc, give a little recap, and get ready for the new series to kick off. Now, Cassia is on a much-deserved vacation. She's taking a week to kick back, read some Jedi texts, go on some adventures, and get rested up. So she's going to be back next week, but this week it's just you and me, and Clone Force 99. But before we get started with the Bad Batch, there was a bit of Knights of the Old Republic news. There's been a bunch of rumors regarding a KOTOR remake, and IGN posted an article on April 21st citing Jason Schreier, who is a pretty credible gaming journalist from Bloomberg, and also Eurogamer, linking a Knights of the Old Republic remake to be in the works by Aspyr. Now, Aspyr is mostly known for doing ports, including some Star Wars ports. So they did the KOTOR ports, they did the Episode 1 Racer ports, they most recently did the Republic Commando ports, which I actually just picked up on the Switch over the weekend. Now, do we think that this is going to be a full-blown remake, or a remaster, or something in between? Really, it's hard to say until we've got some more news from Aspyr about it, but it's always fun to see KOTOR in the news. And personally, I'm just ready for more Star Wars content, so whatever they've got in the works over there, I'll definitely be checking it out. And now back to the Bad Batch. So, disclaimer, I'd never watched the Clone Wars when it originally aired. I'd seen the Clone Wars movie, because I got that on DVD. I didn't even know that it was a thing until I got the DVD, but watched that, never really got into watching the series. But then when season 7 was announced, I knew I needed to watch through the series and get caught up. And like everyone else who watched the series, I absolutely loved it. So I binged through the first 6 seasons in like a month and a half. And then by the time episode 1 of season 7 was ready to go, I was good to go. Now, we're hoping to do some episode recaps and maybe like watch along kind of things for the Bad Batch over on our Patreon. So you'll want to make sure that you check that out. It can be found at www.patreon.com/EbonHawkPodcast, and the link is in our Instagram bios as well. All right, well, May the 4th is nearly here, so we better jump right in. Season 7, Episode 1, The Bad Batch. Embrace others for their differences, for that makes you whole. I really love this fortune cookie message. Well, all the fortune cookie messages are pretty great, but it always seems like the message gives some insight into the episode that we're about to watch and has sort of a real world relevance too, which is pretty cool. And so we find out from the intro, kind of news update kind of thing, that Mace Windu and Anakin Skywalker have been leading a battle on Anaxes, but it's not going great. The Separatist army seems to be learning all of the clone army's tactics, but Captain Rex has an idea about that, so he and Commander Cody want to take a small team behind the enemy lines, infiltrate the command center, and see if they can find out what's going on. Now, Rex has a suspicion about why his tactics aren't working, and he thinks that somehow Echo is still alive. Now, we all thought that Echo died in an explosion way back in like season 3. I think it was episode 19, Counterattack. But, Rex knows that Echo's the only one that would understand his tactics. So if Cody and Rex are going to get behind enemy lines, they need to assemble a team, and Cody has just the unit. It's an experimental clone force with desirable mutations, Clone Force 99, and they call themselves the Bad Batch. And we're going to get to meet the Bad Batch. They come zooming in on their very cool looking dropship, which is called the Havoc Marauder. And they come out and they kind of introduce themselves. So we've got Hunter. He's the leader of the Bad Batch. And we learn later that his special ability is heightened senses. We've got Wrecker. He has incredible strength. We've got Tech. He's like the brains and gadget master of the operation. And Crosshair, who is the sharpshooter in the group. Okay, so we've got Rex, Cody, and the Bad Batch, and they're on their way to Anaxis for this special mission. They got trouble, kind of right away, though, and their ship gets caught down. The Bad Batch thinks it's pretty exciting. They're always up for some excitement, and Wrecker says something along the lines of, we always get shot down when we're with the regs. But unfortunately, they're excited for, getting shot down, but Cody's not. He ends up trapped underneath of the down ship. So, luckily Wrecker's there. He's going to show off his strength and basically just grabs the ship and kind of tosses it off of Cody. So, and then we get to see kind of the rest of the Bad Batch in action too as they're making their way into the command center. So we'll get to see them showing off their special skills. The crew makes it all the way into the command center, and they find where the signal's coming from. Tech kind of taps into it. He finds out that it's coming from Skako Minor, and Rex makes out Echo's troop number. So it looks like the crew is going to have to get a rescue mission going. And that kind of ends the first episode. Season 7, Episode 2, A Distant Echo. The search for truth begins with belief. So this episode starts with a really great scene. So we see Rex, he's reporting back to Anakin, and Anakin says the mission to find Echo sounds good, but first we've got to go do that thing. So the thing is that Rex is going to stand guard so Anakin can have a holo call with Padme. It's really great, and it's really sad because we know what's coming this season. But they have a really neat exchange with Anakin saying he's afraid that, Rex is letting his emotions get the best of him. And Padme says, oh, I wonder where he learned that from. It's a really great moment, a really great scene. And then after the call, Obi-Wan's coming up and, Rex is telling him, he's fixing some equipment, but Obi-Wan's not buying that. And he says, I hope you at least told Padme I said hello. So we've got Anakin, we've got Rex, we've got the Bad Batch, and they're off on their mission. As they're flying on their way to Skako Minor. You got Wrecker, he's doing like one-arm presses with a gonk droid, poor little gonk droid. And, Anakin's asking Hunter, how many missions they've been on, but, they don't know. They all kind of started running together, and Rex asks who they report to, and they don't know that either. So hopefully I would really like to learn a little bit more about that when the Bad Batch series starts. So hopefully that'll shed some light on that for us. So. But as the crew's coming into Skako Minor, we see these big winged creatures that are called Kiridax, kind of through this smoky entrance that the ship's making. And after they land, one of the Kiridax is going to grab Anakin and kind of take him off, and everyone has to go chase him down to the main camp of the planet's inhabitants. And they're called the Politech. Now, unfortunately, the Politech don't speak Basic, but luckily, Tech has this really awesome visor computer thing that he can pull down, and it records, what people are saying and translates it. And so he's able to communicate with them. Now the Politech are saying, we don't want war on our planet, but Anakin tells them they're not here for, to bring the war to them. They just want to go and rescue their, friend Echo and get out of there. So the Politech say, okay, that's fine. So we'll send you with some scouts and we'll help you find your way into the Techno Union base. So they finally do get to the base, but Wat Tambor is there and he's ready for them, and he sends in his droid troops. Now, Wat Tambor's droids are very cool looking, by the way, and we get to see Anakin and the Bad Batch tearing through these. And Rex and Tech are going to go off to find Echo kind of in this central chamber room kind of a thing. So they get in there and there's this pretty cool looking, like a stasis chamber, I think they call it. And, Tech's going to hack into it and get the doors to open. And when they do, we see Echo. He's in there. He basically just kind of falls out of it. And he's hooked up with like all these cables like into his like back and head. And he's looking pale. He's looking super skinny. He doesn't know what's going on. He keeps kind of mumbling and talking about the Citadel, which is, where we thought that he'd died in the explosion. So, and the episode ends with Rex telling him to hang on, Trooper, you're going home. And so that's where episode 2 ends. Season 7, episode 3, On the Wings of Kiridax. Survival is one step on the path to living. So this episode, and really kind of all of season 7, it just drops straight back into the action, where the last episode ended, basically. So we get Anakin, we get Hunter, we get Crosshair, we get Wrecker. They're all out in the hallway fighting off those cool-looking battle droids. But, the battle droids are kind of closing in on them, so they're going to, get kind of backed into the room where Rex and Echo were. Echo's out of it. He doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't remember anything after the explosion on the Citadel, so he doesn't know how he got there or, kind of anything that's going on. He can barely walk. But what they need to do is they need to get out of there because the battle droids are closing in on him. Now, Echo knows that there's an escape route through the ventilation system because he's been hooked up into this central computer here. So they are going to need to, get out of there through the ventilation system. So we get a pretty cool scene. Wrecker is, taking all the, Bad Batch and Rex and, throwing them up into this vent opening. And Anakin kind of walks by and, gives him a look like he doesn't need any help. So Anakin, does his Jedi force jump and gets up into the ventilation shaft there. And he's going to use the force to lift Wrecker up into the ventilation system too. But unfortunately, as they're going, through the ventilation system, they get outside and they're trying to figure out how to get out of there. They get trapped again. But luckily on Tech's headset, he has recorded the call that the Kiridax made when they were first, landed on the planet. So he, basically plays that call and the Kiridax come in and they're going to give the crew a ride out of there. Now, if you've played Jedi Fallen Order, this is really kind of reminiscent of this because they like jump off the bridge and are trying to land on these things. So if you've not played that, I highly recommend you go do it because it's a fun game. But unfortunately, they're flying out of there. But Wat Tambor's droids, they can fly too, because his droids are pretty awesome, apparently. So they're going to, chase the Bad Batch and Anakin and Rex all the way back to the Politech camp. Now, the Politech said that they didn't want war on their planet, but unfortunately, the war is there. It just kind of showed up at their, encampment and their lands. But, after seeing what they did to Echo, they agreed to help the Bad Batch fight. So the battle kind of reminds me of like the battle on Endor with the Ewoks. So you've got the Politech and they're using like these primitive weapons. They've got spears and boulders and rocks and things that they're using to fight these battle droids. But we do get some good moments of the Bad Batch fighting and also Anakin, kind of showing off against these big droid walkers, showing all of his Jedi skills he's got there. So, but, the battle comes to an end. And, luckily, the Bad Batch and the Politech are victorious here against these battle droids. So, the crew has to get back to an Axis, but as the episode's ending, you get kind of this really sort of ominous look from Echo. You don't know what he's thinking. The music's really ominous. And so, so I guess we'll have to wait until episode 4 to see, what side Echo is really on or not. But if you are on the side of the Ebon Hawk podcast, we really appreciate when you leave us an Apple Podcast review. Reviews, subscriptions, and shares help us out a ton. So thank you if you take the time to do that for us. Season 7, Episode 4, Unfinished Business. Trust placed in another is trust earned. So we are wrapping up the Bad Batch arc, back where we started, back on Anaxis, and now that Echo is back on the Republic side, maybe they can get the upper hand. And we see Echo, he comes out, he's wearing some Bad Batch styled armor, but he tells Rex not to worry about him. He says he's not a liability, he's their best chance. So what is the best chance? What's the plan to get control of Anaxis? Well, the Bad Batch, along with Anakin and Rex, are going to infiltrate the Techno Union Dreadnought and let Echo feed them bad intel. And that's what happens. So you get a really cool visual of the Havoc Marauder, the Bad Batch's ship, kind of flying underneath of the Dreadnought, and it lands like upside down. And, so they get in and they get Echo hooked up into the computer system there. So we've got Admiral Trench. He's the one who's leading the assault on Anaxis, and he wants to use the algorithm, he keeps calling it, which is basically the computer that Echo is hooked up into. So he wants to use this algorithm, so when, they tap into that, Echo, who's on board, unbeknownst to Admiral Trench, he gets kind of the plan for what's going on. So we've got the Bad Batch, they're running their mission up on the ship, and down on the surface, we've got Mace Windu and Obi-Wan. They're leading the battle against the battle droids. Now, there's a pretty great part of this where Mace is standing up on like a cargo container thing, and he's telling the battle droids, he says, "I've destroyed over 100,000 of you during the Clone Wars." And he gives the droids the opportunity to kind of lay down their arms and surrender. Of course they don't, but it's, pretty funny and a little bit of humor for Master Windu there. So, but we've got the Bad Batch back on the Dreadnought up there. You've got Echo. He's hooked up into the computer system, and he has an idea. So his idea is that he wants to send all of the battle droids to where Mace and Obi-Wan are fighting. And he says if he can get all of the battle droids together, then he can shut them all down, basically. So, the Bad Batch, they're a little skeptical of this, and, probably rightfully so. But Rex stands by Echo, and, Anakin, he stands by Rex. Just like Padme told him to when they were having their holocall a couple episodes back. So, luckily, Echo is a trustworthy guy. He delivers on his plans. So, yeah, he gets all the droids shut down. So, unfortunately, though, Admiral Trench, he had kind of a contingency plan and set. So he's got a huge bomb. It's ready to go off. If he can't have Anaxis, then no one's going to have Anaxis. So, they do their best to disarm the bomb, but, Anakin's going to have to go and confront Admiral Trench and, call upon the dark side a little bit to get this bomb disarmed. So he gets in there with Admiral Trench, and, Admiral Trench says, "You won't kill me, you're a Jedi," which are, famous last words, because then you get the Darth Vader theme playing, and Anakin slashes through Trench's arms and says, "I don't have such weaknesses," to that. So, bluff was called by Anakin there. So now we've seen Anakin draw on the dark side several times in the Clone Wars, but this is probably the dark sidesiest we see him. And then, before he leaves the room, he ultimately kills Admiral Trench before grabbing like a detonator, and they make their way off the ship. So, but yeah, so they had all the battle droids are gone, Admiral Trench is gone, and now the tide has turned in the battle. So Bad Batch's mission here is done. It's time for them to head off. So, but before they go, they invite Echo to join them. And, we close out the Bad Batch arc with Rex talking to Echo, and Rex says something that's pretty great. He says, "If that's where you feel your place is, that's where you belong." And it ends with Echo and the Bad Batch standing there in front of the Havoc Marauder, saluting Rex, and that's where the Bad Batch arc ends. All right, well, that's the Bad Batch arc in a nutshell. When it came out, I know we were all really excited to get Season 7. We were excited to get more Rex and more Ahsoka, more Anakin, more Obi-Wan, but I don't think any of us were quite ready for the Bad Batch. Now, the Bad Batch had been featured in an unfinished animatic, which I'd never seen prior to this. I think you can find it on YouTube and online if you want to watch it. I think they showed it off at some of the celebrations and some Comic Cons and stuff like that. But yeah, as I mentioned before, I was really late to getting into the Clone Wars, but I'm super glad I got into it. Now, the animation in season 7 was unbelievably good. The shadows, you had a bunch of like smaller kind of effects. You'll see a couple of times when like the ships are crashing and stuff. You'll see like shrapnel like coming up and rocks coming up. It's really detailed. The colors are great. The skyline looks great. Kind of a big jump in computer animation technology and power, I guess, from the time episode 6 went off the air. With that delay before episode 7 got started. So. But what do we think about the Bad Batch? I mean, who are your favorite members of the Bad Batch? Now, Cassia's favorite is Crosshair. Crosshair is pretty awesome. When they're getting off of the dreadnought, you'll see Crosshair is throwing like all these little discs onto the wall, and they turn out to be mirrors because then he shoots one, and his little laser blast kind of bounces around and kills all these battle droids. So Crosshair is pretty cool. I think my favorite is probably Tech. I was like Donatello. He was my favorite Ninja Turtle, and he's kind of like the Tech of the Ninja Turtles. So Tech's my favorite. But what about all of you out there? So Star Wars Negotiations says it's a tough choice, but going to go with Hunter. And Old Republic Collectibles also picked Hunter. Now, Ironic Designs made an interesting choice and went with Omega. So Omega is the little kid we see in the trailer for the Bad Batch. Now, is Omega good or bad? Is Omega a clone? We don't know. We don't know that much about Omega at the moment. So maybe Ironic Designs has the inside scoop on Omega. But I don't know. I think we're just going to have to wait and see how the Bad Batch plays out. So, and speaking of the Bad Batch playing out, what's everyone looking forward to seeing in the Bad Batch? So M They Good says, Clone Force 99 seems a little one-dimensional, and they want to see how they'll build off that. And also they want to see more clones. So one-dimensional, I could see that as being kind of a concern, but I'm not too worried about that. I think when the Clone Wars started, I think that was, kind of a concern that people had. You just had a bunch of these clones, but they all got kind of their own personality, all had some depth to them. So I'm not too worried about that. I think they'll be able to weave a good story around these characters and give them a little bit more depth than what we saw, in these 4 episodes. So, and Galactic Artwork, they're just excited for more Star Wars. Star Wars makes the world better, is what they say, and I agree with Galactic Artwork. More Star Wars is always a good thing. Now, for me, I'm just hoping for good stories. I'd like to see some details about kind of the immediate aftermath of Order 66. We get some of that in like the comics and in Jedi Fallen Order, but I'm ready to see some of those stories play out on my television. And I think that the Star Wars animation is a really good vehicle for doing that. So, but mostly I'm just excited to get Star Wars on my TV every week again. So. I've got, pretty high expectations for the series, but, I think it's just going to be great. And the more Star Wars stories we get out there, the better. And yeah, so that's been the Bad Batch. So I hope you liked this, kind of little recap episode. I hope that everyone's excited for May the 4th when the first episode comes out. And I think that's going to wrap it up. So thanks for everyone for joining us on the Ebon Hawk podcast. This has been Brian with the Bad Batch catch up. And if you like that, you want to follow along with us for more Bad Batch stuff, just be on the lookout for more Bad Batch episode recaps over on our Patreon.
Hello, it is I, Cassia from the future. I have returned from Lehon, rested and recharged from an awesome vacation after a long corona. And now I am fully vaccinated, and I don't know, it's easier to be optimistic right now. So before we close out this episode, I wanted to recount some of your answers to the question I asked on our Instagram page. I asked, what special Star Wars announcements are you expecting on May the 4th? And here are your answers. Astro Droid, I think I know that guy. a new Cassian trailer and Book of Boba Fett premiere date info. It would be awesome to see some Andor footage. I'm excited for that show. It seems like it'll be kind of more of a war story, and maybe it could be kind of like the Mission Impossible team, kind of like the old Mission Impossible TV show. That would be cool. And I think that the Book of Boba Fett is coming holiday Q4 this year, but it would be nice to get some information on that. I mean, I'm not a huge Boba Fett person personally, but I know a lot of people are, and it's good to keep everyone on top of what's going on. And then Astronautica Art says some older public stuff. Don't know, a TV show, a teaser, or only a SWTOR update announcement, but waiting. And yeah, like honestly, I'm kind of expecting something from the Old Republic. I mean, we live in the era of the High Republic, but I feel like they're intentionally building the bridge backwards in time. There's more references, and there's been an uptick in KOTOR merchandise, so I feel like something from the Old Republic is coming. And then Hooney D says Jared Leto as Revan, and I think Hooney would be a huge fan of that casting. Yeah, and I think it might be the greatest Star Wars casting announcement in the history of Star Wars. Maybe even better than Star Wars. And then Ironic Designs says, I hope something KOTOR related or a trailer for a show. And I mean, like, honestly, like, I'm here for KOTOR. We're the #1 KOTOR podcast. And yeah. But yeah, like, I'm thinking we're getting a trailer. I do think I saw an announcement, and I'm pretty sure it was accurate, that Dave Filoni was going to be on Good Morning America. It really wouldn't surprise me if we see a sneak peek, a first look, or a trailer of something from a Disney Plus show. And yeah, it'd be cool to see. And then Star Wars Negotiations says a Death Star in development. And after the long year of 2020 and the kind of bookend in this first quarter of 2021, I think what we really need right now to bring us all together is a Death Star. And then Inspired Galaxy podcast, aka me, myself, says the KOTOR era will be announced, and I agree, me, myself. And then Plo Kool says first image of Ewan back as Obi-Wan, and I would be incredibly happy to see that. And if we could get Hayden in it too, I think I would die and ascend to Star Wars Force Ghost heaven. And then Lorg says movie release date. I would love to hear about the future of Star Wars movies, but I kind of think right now Disney Plus is where the movement's happening. I think the global movie market right now is a little bit up in the air. I mean, it seems like the world might be getting back to normal, but not quite on the time frame we're all wanting. So I think movies will be switched around, but I think we'll see more stability kind of towards the end of this year. I think it depends how the big blockbusters like Black Widow and Dune do, honestly. And yeah, and those were all the responses I got. And our next episode is going to come out on Tuesday, May the 4th, and we're going to be talking to Melissa from Nerf Herder Co. about her Star Wars inspired candles, and we're so excited to have her on. That week, also on May 7th, we're going to have a bonus episode talking about Revan and Darth Bane being cut from the Mortis arc in the Clone Wars series. So You'll have a lot to look forward to. And yeah, we'll close out now. And you can find us on Instagram at Ebon Hawk Podcast.
And if you want to connect with me, you can find me on Instagram. It's at astro_droid_. The Ebon Hawk can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, as well as everywhere else that Anchor Podcasts are distributed. Subscriptions, reviews, and shares help us out.
Our intro and outro themes were composed by Alistair Scheuerman at alistairsounds.wixsite.com/Alistair Sounds. Our transition music was composed by Christian Walker at christianwalkermusic.com. This episode of the Ebon Hawk Podcast has been brought to you by Nikki Dog from Patreon. May the force be with you. We will be back soon. Bye for now.